Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Good morning, peace and blessings to everyone. Ramadan Mubarak to my Muslim brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. So I saw this article yesterday and I heard a couple of YouTubers talking about this subject. So I decided, why not chime in? So I'm going to share my page so that you all can see this article. I'm going to read a couple of excerpts from it, and then I'm going to provide my commentary. So if you can just bear with me a minute, I will share my page. Okay, so here's an article that I saw on Yahoo Entertainment, and it basically talks about how Alyssa Milano calls for a sex strike in response to Georgia's anti-abortion law. So it says Alyssa Milano responded to Georgia's anti-abortion law by calling for women to say no to sex until we get our bodily autonomy back. Our reproductive rights are being erased. The activist tweeted Friday, until women have legal control over our bodies, we just cannot risk pregnancy. Join me by not having sex until we get bodily autonomy back. I'm calling for a sex strike, pass it on, and she's using this hashtag sex strike. And this has generated a lot of conversation. A lot of people are talking about it. It says the message was accompanied by a giant pink X and the caption, "If our choices are denied, so are yours." This article goes on to say that the Georgia state legislation this week banned abortions after a fetal heartbeat is detected as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy. It says that Milano also supports a boycott on filming in Georgia if the law isn't changed. The second season of her Netflix show, Insatiable, is currently in production there. And she said this, that she'll do everything in her power to get as many productions as possible, including Insatiable, to move out of this state until it can, which continues to put forth oppressive, hurtful policy that contradicts everything the entertainment industry stands for. She went on to talk about those who are contractually obligated to stay. She said this, obviously there are those who are already contractually obligated to be there. They should fight to get their show out of Georgia while continuing their contractual obligation. She said, I have to be there for another 3 weeks, but you should be sure I will fight tooth and nail to move Insatiable to a state that will protect our rights. If it doesn't move to another state, I will not be able to return to the show if we are blessed with a third season. This is my leverage. I will use it for the betterment of society and our great country. So, you have the film industry talking about how many jobs they produce and all that kind of stuff. And it also talks about how the Washington Post noted that Georgia passed a tax credit over a decade ago that helps these film production companies. So let me stop sharing my screen. I'm going to look at your comments before I go into my brief commentary. Shout out to Doug. Thanks for tuning in. Peace and blessings to you. Let me see what he's saying. So Doug says, yeah, good morning to you, Doug. Thanks for tuning in. I know it's super early, so hardly anybody will be here, but this is the most convenient time for me to do these live streams. So he says strike because of the abortion restrictions, but okay, killing a baby at term. So let me just go into, my commentary real quick. I'm not going to keep you long. So this so-called sex strike, the only thing that it has accomplished is media attention. I think that for the most part, this is nothing but a publicity stunt. And in some ways, it's good that it has generated this discussion and attention and stuff like that, because this gives people an opportunity to talk about women's rights, women's health, the whole issue of abortion. It reignites this whole debate over abortion. But I think that at the end of the day, it's not going to be effective because women um, love sex just as much as men. So most women are not going to give up sex over an abortion law. So, it's going to generate all this publicity, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be effective because women have the same natural urges as men, despite like these popular myths out here. Women desire sex just as much as we do. They're not going to, withhold sex over some law. And if they were to withhold sex over this Georgia law, it would be a very long time before they ever have sex again, because, this is something that's going to be in place for a while. It's something that's going to have to be litigated in the courts. I'm sure it's going to go from from the lower federal courts, probably all the way to the Supreme Court. So this is going to be a long, protracted thing. It's not going to be something that ends overnight for the most part. So I know that a lot of women are not going to go without sex for years just to make a point about some abortion law. But I see the connection that she's trying to draw in terms of the autonomy of women's bodies, taking control over their bodies. Since the law is trying to take control over their bodies, they're responding by taking control over their bodies. But again, I don't think that that's going to be effective. I don't think most women are going to participate in that strike, even if they're in Georgia and stuff like that, even though this law is, in many ways, a step backwards for the people there in Georgia, for the women in particular. But that's not the most effective strategy. If they really want to affect change in Georgia, then what people need to do is be registered voters. People need to support candidates that support their issues, support candidates that are in favor of reproductive rights and all that kind of stuff. That's what they need to put their energy behind, because it was these politicians who put this law into place in the first place. So you have to elect the right people on the state level to affect this kind of change, to change the laws and stuff like that. Make sure that you have politicians in place that support your agenda. And I think a lot of people understand this. And even in a place like Georgia, there is an opportunity for people to fight this by electing the right people. So that's one thing. And also people need to exhaust other efforts like, lobbying the members of the state legislature, making sure that you put pressure on them and that you actually mobilize people that are prepared to vote against them. You have an election coming up next year, and people just need to be prepared to put forth their agenda, have alternative candidates to challenge these candidates that put forth this legislation. So that's what it has to happen. And then also you need protests. I think protest is another way to affect change. Now, if you have massive protests on a large scale, that has more impact than somebody doing a publicity stunt and putting out here a hashtag. That's not the way necessarily to affect change. If you had massive numbers of people marching in the streets, engaging in acts of civil disobedience, disrupting business, that may have an impact. And I think that she's onto something with respect to this boycott of Georgia. I think that can have a lasting impact, depending on how organized the boycott is, how focused it is. That can actually have an impact, an economic boycott, not the sexual boycott, because again, that's not going to be effective. So you can have boycotts, you can have marches. Those are ways to affect change. And also, this is, at the end of the day, this will be resolved in the courts. that's the best way to fight this. I mean, instead of just putting out a hashtag, um, this woman should put her dollars behind civil rights organizations, you know, civil liberty organizations like the ACLU that would fight this kind of law in court. Put your efforts behind that. Give these organizations more money so that they can effectively fight against these kind of measures designed to restrict women's reproductive rights. So I think that those are the most effective ways to fight this law. I mean, because it will be resolved in court. It's going to go to the federal district court. I'm sure after that, it's going to go to the Circuit Court of Appeals, and then you have the Supreme Court. So there's going to be a need to fight this legally, and there's going to be a need for the resources to do so. So she could put her money where her mouth is, and she could encourage more people to, you know, support groups like the ACLU and others that fight these kind of cases all the time. So that's what I think about that. The last thing I want to address is just like my thoughts about abortion and the right to choose, and, you know, the right to life and all that kind of stuff. I've done videos about this before. Hopefully I'll be able to find one of my older videos on this subject that goes into more detail about my position on abortion. When I find it, I will post it in the cards. But I just want to summarize some of my thoughts about abortion. You know, obviously, I do believe that abortion is the destruction of life. You know, without a doubt, you know, a human life is being destroyed when a woman has an abortion. There's no logical way around that. You know, people try to say, well, it's not a human being and all that kind of stuff. But I think that it is human life, and it is destruction of human life. But I will say this, like, even though it is the destruction of human life, I think that because of the nature of this culture that we live in, that it's not practical to end people's right to choose. You know, ultimately, that's a moral decision that people have to make. You know, it's a personal decision. And I don't think that the government should be playing the role of, you know, Lord and master over individuals. I think that ultimately individuals are responsible for their moral decisions. I don't think it's the role of government to act as moral police, you know, to, you know, dictate what people's morality should be. I think that it's up to the individual, you know, as long as they're not impacting people outside of themselves. You know, I think that moral decisions should be up to the individuals. And I think that within this culture, a culture that has, you know, low value on human life, a culture that celebrates promiscuity and, you know, free sex and all that kind of stuff, I think that in that environment, even if you pass a law that's anti-abortion, you know, people are going to still have abortions, whether they're legal or illegal. And it's similar to like the prohibition, like people prohibited alcohol, but people were going to continue to drink and stuff like that. So having that law didn't end, you know, alcoholism or people drinking and stuff like that. At the end of the day, that's just a moral decision that people have to make. And if they ban it, if they ban abortions or make it highly restrictive, women are going to get abortions anyway, and they're going to end up jeopardizing their health and safety. And I don't think that that's, you know, the right thing to do, you know, to have women risking their safety and risking going to jail and all that kind of stuff because they want to exercise their right to choose. And there are all kinds of situations. Like, I mean, you have situations where women have been raped, women have been sexually abused and all that kind of stuff. Should those women be forced to have a child, you know, or you have a situation where a woman's health is in jeopardy? I mean, should a woman be forced to have a child under those circumstances? So, you know, I just think that this is a moral decision. It's a personal decision. You know, I would never encourage somebody to get an abortion and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's something that this, you know, a horrible, you know, abortion is not like a light matter. It is a very serious matter, but I think that it is something that has to be left to individuals to decide. just like it's left to individuals to decide whether or not they want to have, you know, some alcohol or something. That's an individual choice. And it's going to be like that when it comes to marijuana as well. People are going to have the right to make choices and stuff. And yeah, and there's one other point that I wanted to make about, you know, about abortions. But I'm going to look at your comments real quick. Yeah, but I just think that overall, like, even if you ban abortions, you know, people are going to commit abortion anyway, and they're going to risk their health and their safety. So shout out to Darian. Thanks for tuning in. Shout out to Dave Bowman. Thanks for tuning in. I truly appreciate your support. So let me just see. There was one other point that I wanted to make, and I'm sure I'm going to forget it and then be regretting it later. Yeah, but this issue is very important, and I'm glad that this has generated some discussion about the question of abortion. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and sign out. I know I'm going to, like, right after I sign out, I'm going to be like, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. But I don't want to keep you all long. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please rate, comment, subscribe, like the video, share the video, hit the notification bell. So that you'll know when I post new content. Also, again, I want to remind people who are in the Baltimore area, on June 8th, I will be having an art show and sale. I hope that you all can come out for that. My art will be for sale. As many people know, I paint and I draw. If you're interested in seeing my art, you can visit my page on Instagram. It's at the Asaka Gallery, and between each word there's a underscore. So it's the underscore Asaka, ASAKA underscore gallery. So you find that on Instagram. You can see some of my art there. So I'll have that art sale. That's going to be on the 8th at 1818 North Charles Street at 5 p.m. So I hope to see some people there, and we can just chop it up and talk about different things. Also, I'm going to have a book discussion about Kindred by Octavia Butler. That will be on, I think it's June 22nd here in Baltimore. We'll be meeting at the Terra Cafe in Baltimore. I'll post a link when I get a chance in the description box and in the comment section for those people who are in Baltimore or in the nearby areas, and you can actually attend in person, and we can have a dialogue over great food, great lunch, and all that stuff with great people. So I hope you all can join me for that. For those people that can't join me, I'll have a live Google Hangout, and we'll talk about the book on the following day. So yeah, with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings to each and every one of you. I hope that you all have a great day, and I probably will be right back on here with another quick Google Hangout about this police shooting that took place in Texas. Peace and blessings, everyone. Have a great day.